is Stéphane Épardaud. I work for Red Hat, and I'm going to talk about Quarkus Renarde, which is an old-school web framework with a modern touch. So, what is it? Quarkus Renarde. It's a web framework, but it's also a Quarkus extension. So, who came to the previous Quarkus talk earlier? Okay, not so many people. So Quarkus, to make it really short, it's a framework for making all sorts of applications. They can be REST applications, they can be services, they can be AI applications, they can be CLIs, they can run on the JVM, they can run natively. The idea is that it's going to be super easy to use lots of extensions, integrate with lots of projects, and we move a lot of work from runtime to build time so that your application starts really fast and is very optimized. It has lots of extensions, and Renarde is one of them. It allows you to make web applications with Quarkus. So it's very old school, very Rails and Play-like. How many people here have used Rails? All right. How many people have used Play Framework? Oh, okay. So you'll probably be familiar with a few features there. There's a big, you know what I mean, attitude. Try to make it obvious, make it easy, and not get in the way. So the idea is that it's going to be server-side rendering of templates to produce HTML, but type-safe templates as opposed to the first play. Persistence is going to be done with Hibernate ORM with Panache. The controllers are going to be done with RESTeasy Reactive and a lot of magic dust. There's great support for routing and reverse routing. Client-side dependencies are managed with WebJars, MVNPN, and there's a very easy way to do security with JWT, OpenID Connect, WebAuthn. If you didn't understand all of this, don't worry, we'll show everything in the demo later on, so you'll get to be familiar with them. The biggest question here at this point is why? The hype is for REST on servers and then JS templates on the clients, and everything happens on the clients in JavaScript. To be honest, there's even JavaScript on the servers. But if you're here at this conference, there's a good chance you're doing Java on the server. So there's also a good chance that, like me, you suck at doing JavaScript templating. So why not leverage your Java expertise and let you write your templates without JavaScript? Not every application needs to be Ajax, and even if it does need to be Ajax, we have solutions like HTMX, which I'll describe later, to be able to do this without actually coding JavaScript. So Rails and Play, like server-side applications, are very easy to write and maintain for Java developers and still allow for lots of use cases. Obviously, not every use case, you're not going to write a video game with this, but you know, you can go a long way without this. And this is as, you know, that's the last slide. I think Dimitri's got all the budget for slides. He had great slides earlier. I only have a demo. So let's go. What I'm going to do here, and normally the first thing you do when you write a Quarkus application, you go on the Quarkus website, you learn all about Quarkus, and then you click Start Coding, and it gets you onto code.quarkus.io, which is a great way to get started and generate your first application. So here, I'm going to be interested in two extensions, Renarde, which I have here, and then Postgres for storing my data. Because what I'm going to write here is a to-do application with user authentication and PDF generation and barcode generation and all sorts of bells and features. So once you get this, then you get your application and you unzip it and you start coding. Here, I'm not going to code everything because that's too much things to do, but I'm going to show you exactly how each piece works and how it matches. So you have your application. First thing you do is you start Quarkus in dev mode. So this will start Quarkus, build your application, and then start it, and then it automatically restarts every time you have a change, and it does a bunch of things like dev services, which I'll explain in a bit. So here it started, and I press W, I go to my application. So you can see it's a fairly simple application from the start. It's using Bootstrap styling, and I have a main page here which says welcome, and I have a menu, a bunch of links. All right. So how how do I do this? How do I produce this? First thing to note here is the controller. I have the main controller by tradition in Play, and we've taken this tradition again, is called application. To opt into the special magic of Renarde, you make it extend the controller class. That gives you a bit of extra stuff on top of jax-RS and RESTeasy reactive. So here I have my application. I have an annotation that says it's blocking because I'm going to be doing some database operations in there. So I want to be working in the worker pool. And I have the index endpoint, which is registered for the slash path. All right. So this says that whenever I go to slash, this endpoint will be invoked. What does this endpoint do? It doesn't do much. It just returns a template. So this is the server-side rendering that I'm talking about. And which one in particular? It's this one as described here by this method, static native method, that returns a template. And this is the way to define the signature of the template. So here we define a template. It has a name. It doesn't take any parameter. All right? So if I click on this here, thanks to the IDE, I can go to my template and see the content of the template. This is using Qt templating. It's very similar to lots of template systems, but it's also very familiar to Java developers in the places where it can be, obviously. Here it's using composition, which means that I have a main template, which defines the structure of the HTML and the main menu and etc. of the style. And then every page will extend this and just change the body, so that everything is coherent. So I have the main template. I say I'm going to extend this thing, and I will set the title to this. So this bit is how we do internationalization. So it's M, anything that starts with M and the column, it's going to be a key for internationalization. So if I go to messages.properties, we can see here that application.index.title is this. I have a translation for French. Forgive me, I don't have it for Turkish, but you know, pull request welcome. So let's go back to the template in question. So I do a bit of bootstrap, and then I show the title, the subtitle, and this ends up in the page. What does the main template look like? As you can see, there's a lot of scaffolding to get HTML. I can use injection, which is the same as @inject. I can inject any named bean inside my template. So here I'm injecting the internationalization bean, and I'm getting the current language. I have things here like the bundle. So this allows me to insert some styles. For instance, I explained that I'm using Bootstrap. And how do I actually use Bootstrap? I just use Bootstrap by doing /bundle here, and automatically Bootstrap comes. So where do I define my dependency to Bootstrap? It's in the POM. I have here a dependency on the web bundler, which is a Quarkus extension that will scan my dependencies for dependencies to JavaScript and CSS libraries. And for instance, I have here a dependency on Bootstrap for this version, Popper.js, HTMX, and Bootstrap icons. And these come from MV-npm. So there's WebDrives and there's MV-npm. If you go to MV-npm, then you can look for any dependency that comes from MVN, and automatically it will scan it will import it from MVN and make a Maven package out of it and allow you to get this Maven package, which contains the HTML, the JavaScript, TypeScript, or SCSS, or whatever. And then from this, Web Bundler will scan all your dependencies, scan all your JavaScript, all your SCSS, and call Web Bundler on it to transform it into bundles so that you can use them in your web page. So this is the only thing I need to do in my template to use it. So here, my main template. And I have a bunch of things like the menu here at the top. I have a menu, I have a link to the root, I have a link to login, I have a submenu with help, about, and a way to change the language. So how does this look like? Here is the main logo. You can see here I'm using another way to inject something, and here I'm injecting something which is a URI. So this is reverse routing, which is something that's traditionally just complicated in most places. Here I'm just saying I want a URI to application index. That's the endpoint. And that gives me the URI to it. So that's reverse routing. Very simple to do in the views. I have some logic here where if I'm not if I don't have a user, then I have a link to the login page. And if I do have a user, then I can do more stuff. If I'm an admin, I can do more stuff. I have the drop down with a link to application.about. So what do I have in the about page? Here I have another endpoint, which is the about page, renders the about template. What do I have here? Let's go look what happens when I click here. I have a bunch of stuff. I have a URI, an absolute URI in this case, because I want to be able to have the host included. And I can show you that here I have a special tag to generate QR codes. You have tags to generate barcodes, any kind of barcodes. This can be very handy if you're generating PDFs or just slides. So now we know how to write views, how to map, how to write endpoints, how to map these endpoints to views. What I want to do here now is a to-do app. So I want to be able to display stuff that comes from the database and show it to you. So I'm logging in, so I have access to the to-do list. And now I have a page where I want to be able to display all the to-do items and add new items and mark them done and undone, all right? So how do I do this? Let's go to my to-dos controller, which I have here. It's a controller, it's also blocking, but it's also authenticated, which means that security is applied. I have security checks. I need to have a logged in user in order to use it, because every user has a different set of to-do list. And I have the index page. What do I do in this index page? I find the to-dos for the current user. So get user is a function that I have from Renarde. I know the current user. And I'm going to call find by user on the to-do. So to-do is my Hibernate ORM model. It's using Hibernate ORM with Panache, which means that I extend the Panache entity class, and automatically I get lots of functions for free, like find by ID, count, select, find, lots of stuff. By convention, every field is public, and you don't need to worry about generating getters and setters. And in order to save space, we're not doing DAOs. We put all the logic in there, and then it's much easier to refactor. So find by owner is going to do a query where I'm matching on the owner, and I'm ordering them by ID, and that's a list. All right? So you might be wondering, where exactly did I configure a database? I did not actually configure a database. And if you go to the dev services for Quarkus, if you go to the dev UI, you can see the list of dev services here. And the dev service is something that Quarkus starts automatically for you in order to help you get productive. So it sees that I'm depending on Postgres. It doesn't see any configuration about where it is, but we're in dev mode anyway. So we're going to start a database for you, and we're going to automatically configure it so you can be productive. And we do this with lots of services, lots of integrations. So here I have a database, and I already have stuff to display in my to-do list. So let's look at how I display them. Go back to to-dos. I find the to-dos, and then I call templates.index. You can see here, I talked about type safety. This is where I define all the attributes that I pass to the template, all the variables that are going to be visible in the template, and this is what their types are going to be. So here I'm only passing a list of to-dos, and if I go check out the template, I'm still extending the main template. I have a title, and then I have a table. I have a little bit of localization for the headers, and then I do a for loop. So I do a for loop. I'm going to iterate all the to-dos, and I'm going to do them by storing it in a to-do variable. And you can see the IDE knows the type. It's a to-do type, right? So here I get completion. I get all the features of to-do. And you know, I didn't talk about this. A to-do is defined by its owner. It belongs to an owner, a user. It has a task, what needs to be done. It has a done attribute, whether it's done or not, and a done date to record when it was done. So let's go back to my to-do list. So for each one of them, I'm going to make a row here, a row. I'm going to display the ID here, to-do.id. If the to-do is done, I'm going to strike it with strike through, and I'm going to show that it's done and since when. So here it was done 7 minutes ago. And if it's not done, then I just show it normally, like here. So what's interesting here is that done date is a date, it's a Java date, but there's no since method on Java dates, right? So you might be wondering, where does this method come from? It comes from a Java extension. So in Qt, you can define classes that are template extensions, and then every static method is automatically an extension method for their first parameter. So here, I'm adding the prepend method to the string type, the append method to the string type. I'm adding here the since method to the date type. Right, so this is a very convenient way for you to add custom logic for your views that are not going to be impeding into your Java logic. So I have a since method now on the date. And I have, so now you've seen how we can display stuff from the database into the views. And now we're going to show how we can actually mutate this thing and call actions. So here I have a form, and the action of the form is going to be calling the done method on the to-dos. So here again, reverse routing. I want a URI that points to the done method of to-dos with the to-do ID as parameter. So let's check what this does. It's not a get method, it's a post method because it's going to be mutating. So it's a post endpoint. Automatically Renarde adds the transactional annotation to it, and it's going to take the ID from the path. So what do we do here? First thing we do is we find the to-do by ID from the database, and then we're going to throw a not found error if it's not there. And then we're going to check the current user. Is it a user for this to-do? Because, you know, security check, we don't want to show it if it's not the current user. In which case, we also throw a not found. And then we're going to total the done state, whether it's done or undone. And then if it's done, we're going to record the current date to mark when it was done. Then we have two choices. Ignore the first one, HTMX, I'll talk about this later. So we're going to assume we're in the second case, and I want to add a message to the flash scope. The flash scope is a scope that is only valid for the next redirect. So here I'm going to call the index method. And when I do this, it's actually not going to just invoke the index method. It's going to do a redirect to the index. So because we're in a post here, we don't want the user to remain in the post in the view. So we flash a message so that we do a redirect. And in the next redirect, then the user is going to be in the index page, and they will have all the message in the flash scope. So here I can say do my demo, and then find Turkish wine. All right. So cheese, I've done that. Do the demo, I've done that. Well, I'm doing that. And the other one is for later. All right. So this is how you do mutation. This is how you call actions on the back end. And I can show you the other ones are very similar. So I've shown you done. Delete is just, you know, very similar as well. Delete, we find the to-do, again, if it's not found, and then we call delete on it, and then we redirect to the index with a message. And the last one is adding. Here, another form with an input for the task, and then I call add on it, and I create a new to-do, I record the task, record the owner, I persist it, and then I redirect to the index. So you can see here I can delete, I get the message that's shown, markdown, more stuff, done, delete. All right. So very easy to display stuff, very easy to invoke actions. There is also support for validation. I didn't show you this. What happens if I press enter? Well, nothing. Not nothing. I get this thing is highlighted in red. Why? Because here I have a validation annotation. And contrary to the normal RESTeasy, which blocks you from getting into your method if validation fails, here you do get into the method because there's a lot of stuff that you can do, and we'll see later how useful it is. You get in there, and so what you have to do is to check whether validation failed, then you do what you want. In this case, I redirect to the index, and all the error messages are automatically propagated to the flash scope, and all the previous values of the form are propagated so you don't lose your form, and everything is done automatically for you. So, next, HTMX. So HTMX is when you want to have the benefits of Ajax applications without actually having to write a single line of JavaScript. So you want partial rendering of your page, you want interactive actions, and you want it to be done just in the easiest way possible. So I have a version here with HTMX. I'll show you how it works. It's almost the same code as the other one, except everything is going to be dynamic. So let's see how it differs. So here I said I have an index. That's the normal version, and that's the HTMX version. Very simple, HTMX. It's still extending the main template. I have a little bit of stuff to display messages, but otherwise it's the same table, same headers, same for loop. Here I have something that is special, that is custom for HTMX. It's the ability to define a fragment. What I'm doing here is I'm saying for each row, I have a piece of my template that I call row, which allows me to render a single row. So I'm putting a name on this part of the template and saying, well, I want to be able to invoke only this part of the template. And I do this by, here I have the HTMX definition of my template. I'm saying it takes a list of to-dos and a message. And here I'm defining the signature of the row fragment. It takes only a single to-do. It gives me a row, all right? So let's go back here. I have the same way to display the template. I have an addition here, is that for each row, I'm going to assign them an HTML ID. So row / and then the to-do ID. And why do I do this? Because I need to be able to tell HTMX about these fragments. So here, I have a button for to-do. And when I click on this button, I tell HTMX what needs to happen, all right? So I'll show you what it does. And to show you that this is dynamic, I'm going to have some selection here to show you that the page is not reloaded when I press these buttons, all right? So this is all done dynamically. And how does it happen? Let me show you here, the body. When I press this button, I press it here, I have a response. I don't know if it's big. I have an issue with scrolling. All right, so the content of the response is a single row, right? It's not the entire page. So how do we do this? We do this by saying to HTMX, what happens when I press this button? When I press this button, I want you to invoke the post method on this URI. So it's still the same mutating endpoint as before, right? But HTMX is going to invoke it. And what do you do with the answer of this thing? I want you to swap the outer HTML of this target, the row ID. So I'm saying this current row has an ID, and whatever you get back from the server, you're going to replace this element with this, all right? So I'm doing replacement of a single element. And how does it look like from the done template here? I told you I had two use cases here, two outcomes. If I'm doing normal HTML, then I'm redirecting to the index. And if I'm doing an HTMX request, then I'm returning a single row. So here I'm rendering a single row, returning it to the server, to the client, sorry. And here the client knows, oh, I'm going to swap this and replace this element with it. In the case of to-do, I'm not returning anything, so I'm telling it, you need to delete this row ID, okay? And in the case of add, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say, whenever you add something here, you're going to call this method, and then you're going to insert, before the beginning of the new element, insert the response. So the response is, again, a fragment. It's a row. And here I have the row called new, and I'm just going to insert it right before. So this is a way to make your pages dynamic and use Ajax without having to write JavaScript. You define what happens in terms of HTMX attributes, such as hx target, hx swap, hx post, hx get, and you can do a lot of stuff with this without having to write JavaScript. Final bit of stuff interesting here is this PDF icon, because it's really easy to generate PDFs from Renarde. How does this happen? Here I have a link to todos.pdf, and how does it look in my todos controller? The PDF method, it's exactly the same as the index method, except it produces a PDF. So that's the only thing you need to do. So let's take a look at how it's defined here. I did not use composition to extend the main template because I didn't want to have the menus and everything. I just wanted to have the body, but I could have used the main template. Here I'm just making it simple. I do use the bundle because I want to use Bootstrap, but otherwise it's just bare bones, the same code as the other one. So the beauty of this is that it's usually very complex to create PDFs, but it's very easy to create HTML. It's very easy to style HTML and place everything properly. So if you want to do things like shipping labels, tickets, anything that needs to be done in PDF, you do it in HTML, debug it in your web browser, you have all the tools, and once that's done, you just add produces PDF, and boom, automatically you get a PDF. And the rendering is going to be good. All right, so we've done the views, we've done the controllers. Let's talk about security and how you do login. Because I showed you earlier that here I'm logged in. So let's see the... Sorry? This? I'm not sure when you want to see this, but that's the produced HTML, and this is what is produced by bundle. So I have the login page. I have here support for 3 workflows for creating users. One is the manual workflow where we have username and password and we check your email. The other one is username and passkeys, so WebAuthn. And the third one is OpenID Connect on the left, where we delegate identity to external providers. I'll start with the simplest one, well, the most manual one, registration with username and password. So here I have a login page. So I have a login controller. Don't panic. I have login page, and here this login page, this login template is a bunch of things. On the left, it's going to be OpenID Connect. We'll talk about this later. This is the login, and we're going to start with registration. So it's a form that takes one element, which is the email. It has validation. It must not be blank. It must be an email. How do I do this? I have the register method here. I just have 2 annotations, not blank and email. And if validation fails, I go back to the login form. I look for a user. Again, this is something that is a model from the database. So it's a panache entity. It also implements Renarde user because that's how you inject it automatically in the views. It has email, username, password, WebAuthn we'll talk about later, first name, last name, admin, tenant ID and auth ID is for OpenID Connect. And then a bunch of methods for finding them. So I go back here. What happens when I create a new user? I didn't find the user, so I create a new user. I remember the email. I mark the status as something that needs confirmation because I want to send an email to the user to make sure that the user exists. Create a confirmation code, I persist it, then I send an email to the user. So what happens here? Let me show you. An email has been sent to Steph. All right, so what does this do? Emails.confirm. This is another case where we're using type-safe templates for emails this time, and not just HTML pages. But it's the same system. Here in the confirm method, I'm calling templates.confirm, and instead of returning a template instance, I'm returning a mail template instance, because this has more methods. I can set the subject to, from, I can send it, and then this automatically sends an email to the user. I can show you the template. It's also using composition. I have another main template for emails. Otherwise, this is going to be the body. Here I have, if you want to register, click on this link, and I'm passing not a URI, but an absolute URI, because I need the host name included. It's not a web page, to the login.confirm method. All right? So I have a text variant as well. You just place them next to one another, and we bundle the email with text and HTML. What happens when you click on this? Well, in prod mode, the email is sent. In dev mode, the email is not sent. It's shown on the console because that's the most useful. So you can see I've included here the URI with the host name. It's absolute. You can click on it. This gets me to the confirmation page where I can actually add more info, like my username, my password, password confirmation, first name, last name, and then I can click complete. So let's take a look at this page and how it looks like. So it's the confirm page. I have a big form. The form calls complete on the login controller, and it has a bunch of elements. I've shown you the elements, the username, the password to, first name, last name, and then a bunch of hidden stuff for WebAuthn, and then a button for complete. So what happens when I click complete? I have here the confirmation code as a REST query, and then I have a bunch of stuff coming from the form. So username, password to, first name, last name. I make sure that I'm logged out before I actually do this. I check the confirmation code, whether it's valid. And if validation fails, I go back to the confirm page. So for instance, if something is missing here, then I get back here. You can see here the value of composing the validation between the parameters with annotations and logic, because in some cases, if I'm not doing OpenID Connect and I'm not doing WebAuthn, then I need to check that both passwords are there and that they're equal. And this is not something you can do with just annotations. So there's custom logic to it. There's more logic. I need to make sure that the username is free, etc. So once I've done all this, and I probably messed up my password, and complete registration, I'm logged in, and then I have my own list of to-dos and separate from the other user. All right. So what do I do here is I just hash the password with bcrypt. Remember the username, first name, last name, reset the confirmation code, the status, and then I do a redirect to the welcome page. This is again reverse routing. This is the API side of it, not from the view, but you can do it from Java, just pass a lambda, and we know how to generate a URI to it. And we use this rather than invoke it directly because we need to make a user cookie, which is a JWT cookie to remember you. All right. So you're logged in. Now you can log out. We can log in again here using a password, like Steph maybe. All right, and I'm logged in. The other option now is WebAuthn. WebAuthn is passkeys. It's a way to tell people to not use passwords anymore, but use your fingerprint if you're on your phone, or just a button press if you have a YubiKey like me. And this technology essentially removes passwords from the equation by creating a public key and a private key and sending the public key to the server and saying, next time this user wants to authenticate, he has to sign something for this key, all right? So how do you do this? Let me show you. I'm going to create another user. I go to click the confirmation link here. And in this case, WebAuthn, I'm not going to set a password, and I'm going to click this button, and it's going to tell me, oh, create a passkey. So I press the button, and it's going to create a passkey. And how does it work? So let me show you. I go back to the login, no, it's the confirm.html. Here I have this button for WebAuthn. And I have a bit of JavaScript because all WebAuthn on the web browser is driven by JavaScript. You need to actually invoke JavaScript to be able to create and query your WebAuthn. So when I click on this register button, I'm going to require those 3 fields and then call register on a WebAuthn object that Quarkus gave me. And then I'm going to remember these values. Well, I could do a number of things. I could do an AJAX call and just complete everything, but I want to stay on this page. So I have a bunch of elements that are hidden form elements here in which I'm going to remember the public key and all the information required by WebAuthn. So when I do this, and then I call complete, it's going to call complete with this data filled. So WebAuthn response is going to have more data than just the password, all right? So, and this again shows you why it's very important to have validation as a programmatic API, because here, if I'm not doing WebAuthn, I need to check the password, but if I am doing WebAuthn, I just need to check the WebAuthn information, right? It's different validation depending on what you get in. In the case of WebAuthn, I'm not going to hash the password. I'm just going to call a helper function, which is register on the WebAuthn security, and that creates a structure which I have to persist in the database. So WebAuthn credential, it's another Panache entity. It has a bunch of fields, really you don't want to know. It's all standard, and I persist it, and then it's in the database. And then when I log out, I want to log in again, WebAuthn, I think it was called. I press this button, I press my key, and automatically I'm logged in. It's the same sort of logic in login, all right? So the last thing is the last option. If you don't want to do this, or if you want to compose this, you can use, I'm showing you different ways to log in and implement login, but you don't have to use them all. You can just compose them. You can use them all, but you can also use a single one of them if you prefer. If you want to do OpenID Connect, it's very useful to delegate all the work of validating the passwords, validating the user's identity and the email to something else. And that something else can be a number of providers like Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple. There's really a bunch of them. What I want to do is that when I click on Google, I'm asking Google to verify that I have an account. And here I have 2 accounts, so I select this one. Google verifies this and gets me back to my website and says, well, you need to complete registration because I have an account at Google, but I want to have an account on the To-Do application as well. But it got from there, pre-filled information. It knows my email because it validated it. It knows my first name, last name, so I just need to fill in my username. And how does this look? How do we do this? Well, it's pretty easy. We have, in order to support OpenID Connect, we need to add an implementation of Renarde OpenID Connect handler, and mostly one method here, which is OpenID Connect success. This gets called whenever we return from OpenID Connect from Google, Apple, whatever, And it tells us, well, we just got back a success from this tenant. So tenant is, in this case, Google. It could be Apple, it could be something else. For this for this auth ID. So that's my personal ID at Google. It would be a personal ID at Apple if the tenant were Apple. So looking for the user, do I have a user for this tenant for Google for this ID? And if I don't, it means I'm registering. So I create a new user, I remember the tenant and the auth ID, and then I can use OpenID security to get information from the OpenID login that I just got. So I got the email. Well, Twitter doesn't have one, but most of them have their first name, last name, username. You get them. I save them in the user. I persist the user, and then I redirect to the confirm page, which is the page we just had previously. All right. And in login, you can see here, most of the logic we did was when we're not in the OpenID Connect case, because if we're doing OpenID Connect, we don't need a password, we don't need WebAuthn, so we don't need to verify this. We don't need to hash the password or store the WebAuthn credentials, so we don't even need to make a user cookie because we have a special cookie for OpenID Connect. So this is how it gets us through, and if I log out and I log in again, the next time I log in with Google, I am not passing through the confirm page because I fall in the other case here. I fall in the case where the user is not null and he's registered. So I get you directly to the index because you're logged in. All right. So this is it. 3 ways of doing authentication. I didn't show you how to change the language, but that's pretty simple. That's in the main template. I have here 2 actions, calling application.english or application.french. And this, what do they do? The French endpoint just sets the local to French and then redirect to the index, and the other one to English and redirect to the index. So that you can see, pretty basic. The last thing I want to show is very helpful if you're writing a certain kind of application. So here I need to be admin. I have a link to the back office, which is a module from Renarde that you can import. And if you import this module, we generate all the scaffolding for you to be able to edit, list, and create new entities for your model. So all this is generated. You can see all the to-dos we've done. You can edit them, mark them as done, save, etc. You can see all the users we've done. You can see this was WebAuthn user. You can delete it. You can add new ones. The only thing you need to do is to enable it for every type that you want to allow access to. So for instance, I define a user backoffice for the user. So it's a backoffice controller for this is the type of entity that I'm telling it to provide a UI for. And this is the place where I put my security annotations, which you can say they're just a logged in user or an admin or something more complex. And automatically we generate all those pages. So there are lots of use cases where you have a lot of viewers for your pages, but you have out of batteries, perhaps? All right. So you have a lot of users, but you have very few admins, very few people putting into the... And that's the end of the demo. So I do have just one more slide. So this was Quarkus Renarde. I showed you how to do HTML, HTMX, security, WebAuthn, OpenID Connect, reverse routing, validation, endpoints, PDF, barcodes, a lot of stuff. There's more where this came from, so feel free to go and check the Quarkus Renarde application and the to-do sample app, which are both on Google, on GitHub. There's I showed you the back office. There's another cool stuff called the database transporter, which helps you to very simple API to be able to transport data from one application to another via JSON. So you just say, I want all these entities serialized to JSON, and it handles all the links and relationships within them, serialize it to JSON, and then you can import it into another running instance and then transform it, and it gets added automatically to your database. So that's very handy in lots of cases. Integration with web components, with a web bundler, with HTMX. So we're looking for users and feedback. So if you're interested, if you have a use case for this, don't hesitate to come and talk, or open PRs, open issues, and just try it out and give us feedback. And that's it, I think. Thank you. Do we have time for like quickly questions, or yes? If anybody has questions. One question.
I have one question. As I know, there's a out-of-box web page, the UI page on the Quarkus side.
The Dev UI.
Yeah.
Yes. No, it's not. Dev UI is for every Quarkus application. Yeah, it lists all the extensions, and every extension can participate and add more functions. So that's very handy. Every extension uses that.
Yeah. The second one is not a question, it's my opinion for now. As I see, this project is a little bit out of Quarkus definition. What is Quarkus saying? That it's saying that it's a subatomic and it's personally Java.
Yes.
But now Quarkus is providing a little bit HTML templating.
But that's how's that different? The core focus of Quarkus initially was REST endpoints, but then it grew to lots of other stuff because that's very similar. It grew to also serverless and functions. It grew to streaming. It grew to CLIs. And also a lot of people were using REST for feeding into JavaScript application, JavaScript web applications, so we catered for those. We added the web bundler and Quinoa to cater for those, but there's also a lot of people that wanted to do the same with server-side rendering and just not use JavaScript. But the templating system, for instance, was there from day one for emails, and we're using it now for HTML because that makes a lot of sense.
That's my first opinion on that.
Yeah.
Is the native image supported by this?
Sure. Yeah. It makes for a very I run a conference called Riviera DEV, and the website is implemented in Quarkus Renarde, and it's compiled natively. So it used to be I had a cluster to be able to do upgrades, so that I would have no downtime between the upgrades. With failover to a different node between the upgrades, but now I don't even need that anymore because restart is 10 milliseconds. So that's cool. Yes. It's not decoration. It's the only way in Java to have a method signature without a body. Otherwise, I would need to make the class abstract. But that's it. That's like real native. So it's the native keyword is what it means is that this is the signature of a function, but it's defined in a different language. And in this case, and that's the case, but not just JNI. And in some cases, it could be it used to be C, but in this case, it's Qt. It's defined in a different language. So. Yeah. There's no JNI, there's no native compilation involved. It's just a way to have nobody in the method.
Because we can define it as an interface.
We can also define it as an interface, but then you would not be able to call the method.
Another question was about exception handling. It's just taken from Quarkus exception.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, bye.